One can only imagine that if you want the right part delivered at the right time and in the right amount, you would need some method of management or control. Without one, you would end up with excess inventory or not enough inventory. The just-in-time system uses a method known as Kanban. Kanban is one tool within the just-in-time production system. Kanban is used to connect information flow to the necessary action or production of a customer's needs. The Kanban system works off the pull of the customer, creating a more demand-driven enterprise, which results in lower inventory levels, less waiting, and better control of production amounts. The Japanese word, loosely translated, means card, billboard, or sign, but oftentimes other sensory notifications such as empty spaces, cones, or lights are used to notify a supplier of a customer's need. In the purest sense, Kanban is a trigger. The card was an early method used to help people learn to act on a trigger for replenishment and manage the demand associated with the need. Essentially, the Kanban card and other triggers were used to help manage the replenishment and behaviors associated with replenishing inventory. The basic premise is that the pull begins at the customer or the end of the process with a leveled schedule that is based on only real demand or real expected demand. This demand represents what the customer is pulling for. The final process step uses a Kanban to pull materials or information from the previous process step, which pulls from the previous step, and so on, all the way through the value stream. A push system is the production or performance of any item or activity performed at a required time by a given schedule that has been planned in advance. Many push systems are built mainly to forecast. Push systems can also include issuing material or performing an activity based on a schedule rather than a need. Push systems create excess inventory, which is one of the 8 forms of waste. There are many different types of Kanbans that are used within organizations. 3 of the most common are move Kanbans, production Kanbans, and supply Kanbans. Let's learn a little more about the different types of Kanban. We'll see you shortly. Internal move Kanbans are essentially permission to retrieve or move materials or information. The move Kanban authorizes one point of a process to get what they need and move it. Many cards will show the consuming location and the supplying location so that the person moving the tagged item knows where to move to. Let's look at a very basic example of how the move Kanban works. Every step in a process has an inbound, working, and outbound point. The move Kanban works with inbound and outbound points in a process. Inbound areas typically hold a fixed amount of materials, sub-assemblies, supplies, parts, information, or data that is needed during the process. The outbound point holds the completed part from the process. Keep in mind that a Kanban could be a card, container, light, dolly, empty space, or a variety of other things. In this example, the inbound materials contain a move Kanban. When the next process step begins to consume those materials, the move Kanban is removed and taken back to the previous process step's outbound point. Once it arrives at the outbound point, it is attached to a new full amount of the needed items or information.
Once the move Kanban is attached to this new full container, it is then moved to the next process step's inbound point. As you can tell, the move Kanban acts as a trigger, telling workers when something is ready to be moved. Here's another example. A machinist places his parts in an outbound stocking point. For his process, they are complete, and he needs to move them to the next step. He places a move Kanban with the parts. When a water spider sees it, he picks the Kanban and materials up and moves it to the next process step's inbound point. When the materials begin production on step 2, the Kanban is removed and placed on another group of materials to keep the flow going. And that's it, a move Kanban. As you can tell, it's a very basic tool that guides and directs you through a process's routing and helps materials and information keep the flow going. We'll see you in the next module. This type of Kanban is probably one of the most basic and used types of Kanban. The card is used in manufacturing and software development to trigger production. One common way for production to start is with a list of everything that needs to be completed in a specific amount of time. A workstation then provides a production Kanban to an area requesting the types of materials or tasks they need produced. This signals the production system to start. The production Kanban will direct the sequence of production so the process is not mixed up. In addition to this, the production Kanban will explain key details such as the quality and quantity of the things that need to be produced. Let's look at another example. Let's say process 1 needs to provide process 2 with a certain quantity of parts. To start, a production Kanban will be taken and placed on a board, in a dispatch box, or some other type of tool to visually manage your Kanban demands. Next, the Kanban card is taken according to order and production begins. The production Kanban should give you clear direction and guidance with regards to the production sequence. In other words, your process may make a wide variety of parts for other processes. The Kanbans should be produced in the order that they are placed on the board or in the dispatch box. Once production is complete, according to the Kanban, it is then reattached and moved to an outbound point where the next process step can come and retrieve the needed items. As you can see, the production Kanban triggers the production of only items that are needed. This keeps the lines full and works only on the pull of actual demand. This is a major difference than the traditional push system, as the pull approach using production Kanbans controls the supplying process rather than by a schedule. In this manner, the supplying process only produces what the customer process actually used, and the two processes become linked together in a customer and supplier relationship. When a Kanban system is running internally, the transfer of classical Kanbans into different areas can be established fairly easily. But what if you have parts that are made by suppliers and need to be transferred externally? In this case, a supplier Kanban is used in place of a withdrawal or a move Kanban. A supplier Kanban process is usually described as a connection between your external vendor and the internal Kanban system. This can also work with different locations of the same company. The companies can be linked together into a supply chain process via Kanban and replenish effectively. Put very simply, a supplier Kanban can be attached to a container that is located in an inbound area of a downstream process. When the downstream process begins consuming the materials, they remove the supplier Kanban and send it to their outside supplier. Here's another example where we have 4 different points in a process, including an external supplier. The supplying process sends a withdrawal Kanban to retrieve more materials. Next, the store pulls the materials and delivers them to fill the supply process's demand needs. This now leaves the store without some materials. In order to replenish, the store that holds raw materials sends a Kanban to the materials supplier requesting more materials from the appropriate vendor. The vendor then delivers to the store to fill the store's demand needs. Remember, there are many different ways that Kanban can be implemented. A best practice is to include any suppliers that you are working with to ensure that everyone understands the process. That completes this introduction to supplier Kanbans. We'll see you in the next video.